Okay, so what if one of history's greatest philosophers left behind a secret confession? Imagine we've just discovered a manuscript that's exactly that, a startlingly honest, late-life reflection from the great Stoic philosopher Seneca. In it, he grapples with the huge gap between the man he was and the man he taught everyone else to be.
The whole thing opens with this line, and right away you know this is different. This isn't the confident teacher we read about in the history books. This is a man who's come to suspect that all his words, even his own brilliant philosophy, might just be what he calls the final vanity.
So here's how we're going to walk through his journey. We'll start with his big confession and how he confronts his own shadows. Then we'll get into his newfound respect for the body's wisdom, his deep fear of an unlived life, and finally how he manages to find a sense of gratitude, right there in the ruins of his own ideals.
All right, first up, Seneca just lays it all out on the table. He dives right into the central conflict of his entire life, the massive, gaping chasm between the Stoic ideal and the life he actually lived.
And this is really the core of it. I mean, look at this. The ideal Stoic sage, totally indifferent to wealth and power. The actual Seneca, he was one of the richest men in Rome and served as a top advisor to the tyrant Nero. The sage is supposed to have perfect calm, but Seneca flat out confesses to being full of fear and doubt. And maybe the most shocking part, the sage is indifferent to death, but Seneca admits, "I am not indifferent."
This forces him to completely reframe what wisdom even is. He starts to argue that it isn't about being perfectly consistent. That's just a performance. For him, real wisdom only begins when you can honestly look at your own contradictions. And let's be honest, who can't relate to that feeling, that gap between who we pretend to be and who we really are?
So after admitting he's a walking contradiction, Seneca goes even deeper. He starts to explore the darker side of virtue itself and his own role in the corrupt world of power.
He comes up with this powerful idea that every single virtue, if you push it too far without balance, casts a shadow. Courage without wisdom, that just becomes recklessness. Justice without any mercy, well, that curdles into cruelty. And even wisdom, his highest ideal, becomes just another form of pride if you don't have humility. And this brings him to the moral nightmare that haunted his career in Nero's court. He basically asks himself and us, what's better, to stay pure and idealistic but have no power to change anything? Or do you get your hands dirty, become compromised, but maybe, just maybe, do a little bit of good from the inside? He has no easy answer for it.
You know, this impossible struggle with the world outside and the compromises inside, it forces Seneca's journey inward. And after a serious illness, he has this massive revelation about a source of knowledge he'd spent his whole life trying to ignore, his own body.
He starts to critique this whole idea that we're just rational souls trapped inside a fleshy prison. He says, no, we're not ghosts in a machine. We are integrated body-minds. The physical and the mental, they're completely tangled up together.
And this reframes everything. He asks, what if our physical limits, getting older, getting sick, knowing we're going to die, what if those aren't problems we need to solve? What if they're actually our greatest teachers? What if it's our vulnerability that actually teaches us things like patience and compassion?
This leads us to the emotional heart of the whole manuscript, where Seneca finally confronts the one fear that truly terrified him, way more than death itself. Now remember, this is the guy who wrote volumes on how to meet death with courage. But in this raw confession, he admits that all of that kind of missed the point. He realized the real terror isn't the moment your life ends.
It's getting to the very end and realizing your whole life was a performance, a series of roles you played, distractions you chased, while you were somehow completely absent from your own existence. For Seneca, that was the ultimate horror.
And this terrifying realization leads to this profound moment of acceptance. He finally understands that this messy, compromised, imperfect life is his life. That fantasy he had, that one day he'd retire and finally begin his real life of philosophy, he sees that it was an illusion. It was a trap that was keeping him from being present in the only life he actually had.
So where does all this leave him? In this final section, Seneca discovers a completely new kind of wisdom. It's one he finds not by chasing perfection, but by sitting in the ruins of his own failures.
He uncovers this incredibly mature paradox that you can hold two opposite feelings at the same time. He feels this deep despair over his compromises and his failures, but right alongside it, he feels this overwhelming gratitude for the gift of life itself. He learns they don't cancel each other out. And what is he grateful for? It's not the wealth, not the fame, it's the absolute fundamentals, the sheer miracle of consciousness, that we can witness the universe, the magic of language, that we can share our experience with someone else, the beauty of the ordinary world, the incredible gift of a friend who truly sees you, and finally, the simple, precious gift of time, of this present moment.
And so, this lost manuscript leaves us with one final lingering question. Seneca's entire journey was about moving from the performance of wisdom to the messy, authentic, and grateful acceptance of an imperfect life. And the question he had to face is one we all have to face sooner or later. What performance are you ready to let go of?